Welcome to the kbbreview podcast. I'm Andy Davies, and today we're in a dreary old loft in South London, and our challenge is to turn this empty bit of audio space into a fully fledged podcast episode in just 45 minutes. But I only have a budget of 20p, some MDF, a bag of screws and a router. And yes, today we're talking to changing rooms legend Laurence Llewelyn-Bowen. But of course, I'm doing him a massive disservice by limiting his extensive career to just that one show, no matter how impactful it was. He was and is an extremely accomplished interior designer, of course, but he has also been educating the public about design on TV for, brace yourself, nearly 30 years. Changing Rooms started in 1996. After a bit of back and forth with manufacturers, he has just designed and launched his own kitchen range called Quintessential, specifically for independent kitchen showrooms. And as you'll hear in this interview, he loves independent kitchen showrooms. This is genuinely a fantastic interview, mainly because it's not me doing it. It's my kbbreview colleague, George Dean. And Laurence is as fabulous as you would expect, but he is also incredibly candid and open about his thoughts on kitchen design and retail, and his previous endorsement deals with multiples. Listen out for my favourite bit, where he gets slow hand-clapped on a plane thanks to his association with Moban. It's all brilliant stuff, and it's clear that he really does love design and what it can achieve if done properly and with conviction. So I really can't recommend this one highly enough. So let's get on to it. Let's hand over to George Dean and Laurence Llewelyn-Bowen.
So I'm here today with a man who obviously needs no introduction. This is design legend Laurence Llewelyn-Bowen. How are you doing, Laurence?
I'm fine. I love it when people say needs no introduction, because I always like to press them anyway. It's like, yeah, go on, give me an introduction, just so we know how the rest of the chat is going to go. So well done, George. I like design legend is great, or legend, as I like to pronounce.
Design legend Laurence. We'll take that.
Design legend.
So one of the things I wanted to talk to you today was you've been quite busy in the kitchen industry as of late.
Yeah, well, I mean, the kitchen, it's extraordinary. And the way that the kitchen has become this kind of icon in the home for people. And I think that the energy now that people are using to create a kitchen that they feel is an absolute expression of who they are and their personality is just so gratifying, because I think, there was nothing more dispersing than looking at the kind of the average kitchen of the noughties or the teenies even, because it was this sort of ridiculous continental inspired machine for cooking in. There's no other way of putting it. There was an obsession with sous vide and with all sorts of very, very complicated techniques, without actually understanding that kitchens aren't there to produce food. Kitchens are actually there to be the center of the family. They are the pivot around which hearth and home spin. And kind of always have been. You go back 150 years. Okay, well, super posh people would never dream of being seen in the kitchen, because that was the servants' domain. But most families in this country would have treated the kitchen as this incredibly hardworking, very, very nourishing space in which they did most of their living. Yes, of course, it was where food was prepared, but actually it's where the warmth was, literally where the warmth was. It would have been where, work was. It would have actually been where they were bathed. This is where you would have got the tin bath filled with water. And actually, I think that as it seems to be happening on so many levels at the moment with the way that we look at the home, we're all beginning to reset. So we're beginning to question some of the, I believe, absolute, complete, barking mad ridiculousness that was kind of codified in the 20th century, predominantly by a handful of really rather malodorous, friendless intellectuals in Germany under the Bauhaus in the 1920s. Like these ideas that every space should have a very clear distinction. Every space in the home should be identical. Every home should be identical. Every person should be identical. That was the vision of modern society. And I think since the 21st century, we've all begun to challenge that, because actually for thousands of years, we did things in a slightly different way. We lived in a very, very different way. We lived in a natural, organic way. And I think one of the big expressions of that in the home has been the reclamation of the kitchen revolution that has inspired most people in this country to now not want the kitchen as just something that you show off to your friends about, that, you can't actually put a soupy spoon down on your incredibly high maintenance Italian work surface. Actually, the kitchen wants to be, needs to be, is longing to be somewhere that is actually where all the love comes. And I mean, when I was approaching my kind of kitchen manifesto, if you like, which I've done, this is what quintessential kitchen concept is all about. It's my kitchen manifesto. I was very, very keen to use specific psychological starting points for the most perfect kitchen. And one, the cuisine kitchen, which is the kitchen that I created for myself, very much keyed into the kind of kitchens that I remembered as a child, which were extremely successful. There was a mini reset that happened in the early 70s after the oil crisis. It was the moment that everybody moved away from space age and started getting involved in Laura Ashley and Hedgerow's Country Diary. It's all completely going over your very young head, George, but
I've read the history books. I know what you're talking about on a conceptual level.
Exactly. But there was a point where kitchens actually did become all about pitch pine and Le Creuset, and Mediterranean tiles and, bubbling vats of goulash or spaghetti bolognese. And they were the kitchens that I remember from my childhood as being the kitchens that were full of love. You'd be sitting on a corner, a big pine table doing your homework. And, Granny would be sucking all the chocolate off chocolate Brazils and then putting the Brazils back in the pot, whatever. Mum would be cooking, dad would be, oh my God, stripping his motorcycle, I don't know. Didn't often happen with my father. He was a surgeon, so if he brought his work, you didn't really want it happening on the kitchen table. But I felt very strongly that actually what needs to happen now, which is what I've done with Quintessential, is bring emotion back into society.
Is that sort of the guiding principle of the new Quintessential range, that it's about emotional kitchens?
It is absolutely about emotion. It's absolutely about the emotional state you feel when you start getting excited about the kitchen that you feel you deserve. Because, I mean, the other thing is, don't forget, George, I mean, kitchen is the most expensive thing you'll ever buy in your home. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I mean, even if you buy a really cheap one, it's still in terms of your available budget, it's still the biggest chunk, the biggest bite. And what really was breaking my heart was the idea that people were spending an enormous amount of money on something that actually wasn't them, wasn't what they wanted. Meanwhile, of course, back in the teenies, the tweenies, whatever you want to call them, there was a ridiculous, phenomenal, stupid amount of conspicuous consumption. That actually the amount of thousands that you spent on a fridge was the most important thing, regardless of whether the fridge worked or not. Actually, it was about the brand. I think this is the most bankrupt, morally, emotionally, spiritually bankrupt way of decorating any space. But a space that is going to be the one thing that you are absolutely hanging everything on, I just think that's absolute pants. So the quintessential thing came very, very organically out of the fact that I needed to design a kitchen for myself. I needed it for my daughter Hermione when we split the house into for her family on one side, my family on the me and Jackie on. And there were two very different approaches. Jackie's a phenomenal cook. We travel an enormous amount. We're in our 60s. We want things to be practical, but also we want it to be a bit dashy. I'm not going to go towards my grave quietly. I'm not going to do it beigely. And I love the idea of playing around with some of the stuff that I remember, with color, with pattern. The fact that I designed this vinyl floor, which everyone's gone mad for, because people haven't seen a patterned vinyl floor for, centuries. But
and it scares them, doesn't it, to see something a bit new like that? It's almost startling, isn't it?
They're scared and they go, oh my God, that's amazing. It's exciting. And for Hermione, we needed to do something that fitted in with the fact that she's got two small children. For them, it's much more, they wanted something that almost felt like a private members club. It's almost like the kind of the bar in a private members club. But neither of them are big at cooking. They just want to be able to make coffee. They want to be able to, unpack their Uber Eats. Quite the of her mother, who wants to chop and cut and skin the garlic and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, it was a very organic thing that I needed to create these kitchens anyway. And that's when, I started working with now System 6. about casting that net even further and understanding that there were other psychologies at work in the way that people conceive their kitchens. And so the cuisine concept is very much the concept of the kind of the jacked Mediterranean kitchen. It's the ultimate kitchen that, if you when you go on holiday and actually it's a really nice kitchen, and you think, oh, I've really lucked here,
And you don't really want to go home, do you, at the end of it?
home, exactly. And it's got the great tiles and it's got the kind of the colored cookware and, it's all about that kind of very experiential moment. And so that was Cuisine Albany, which is what Hermione's got. Like I say, it's terribly sophisticated. It's actually based on furniture rather than kitchen design. So it's very much conceived as a concept that fits into a larger space if it needs to. It doesn't have to, but it can do. And that's a very important response, because I remember talking to a client and they were so shocked because their kitchen fitter was surprised that the kitchen that they were integrating into their living room was being conceived to coordinate with their living room rather than the living room coordinate with the kitchen. It's just like, yes, duh. It is that way, sir. And then the two other concepts, kitchen disco, which is, oh my God, you cannot believe how fast we're selling them. So that is everything you would expect. Probably a lot of people's worst nightmare. But then most people, it seems, it's their wet dream for a kitchen. It is a disco ball. It is flamingos. It is, strong pastel colored terrazzo. And
That's the one that's sort of stuck with me. I've
Oh.
seen all four of the designs, obviously, but
My
that's the
God.
one that jumps out.
It really, really is. And it's, people are buying and they're crying when they buy it, because they've got this vision in their head of baking in there. They've got music on, they've got disco on, they've got the kids in there, they're having fun in the kitchen. What they're not doing is sort of worrying about whether, God, we've got to clean the surface, or we've got to do this, or we've got to do that. Actually, it's literally bringing emotion into that kitchen space. And then finally, we've got Kashmir, which is my kind of deliberate evocation of this concept of quiet luxury, that, actually neutral is fine. Neutral is great. Neutral is good, but you need to design neutral in a sexy way. So it's just been absolutely fascinating that the customer is, and because these have got such cogent, such easily digested names, it means that the customer gets it and they go, oh my God, kitchen disco. Or they go, oh my God, kitchen disco. Yeah. Or cuisine. Oh yeah, cuisine. And so that then led on to the next stage of the project, which I think is the really, really, really unusual. So I basically was fending off big names, none of which I'll mention because I won't.
Okay, I'll give you that one.
You can imagine, all of whom wanted a Llewelyn-Bowen kitchen. Even after 30 years on television, even after being 60, apparently I'm still commercially very hot. Huzzah, the future. But actually, I remember sitting in one of the meetings, and all I got was a long list of things that they didn't want me to do.
So it's quite restrictive in a
I
way.
just thought, well, that's never going to work then, is it? Actually, that's just not what it's about. And of course, the thing is, when you're dealing with a multiple, and I get this, I mean, you're dealing with a multiple, they have to find something that's going to work across 300, 400 showrooms. They're going to, it's an enormous manufacturing commitment. They're going to have to be bringing things in from all over the world. That again is a big issue now, kind of design wise. And they are not going to want something that is going to stimulate you too much, because what they don't want is a Llewelyn-Bowen kitchen in their showroom, which then overshadows their unbelievably boring grey boxes. So I'm not going to do it with them. I'm absolutely not going to do it with them. It was System 6 who were just incredible in all of this. What we would do would be to specifically target independents. And that just made me so excited.
Because one of the things I wanted to ask you about was, obviously, I was quite pleasantly surprised to see that you were exclusively partnering with independents on this one, as opposed to big multiples.
So there are two things there. Number one, it gives me great pleasure and great pride. I think the idea of being able to bring a bit of emphasis and a bit of energy back into the high street, I think is an incredibly good idea. But actually, the big thing here is the fact that I am now dealing with guys on a very personal level, and they are basically brand ambassadors. So everyone that now stocks a quintessential kitchen is basically they're part of my team. We talk about it a lot. We go through the whole concept a lot. I'll do whatever I can to support the marketing of it if it's
Oh, because you've gone to do a lot of the openings for these, haven't you? I've seen you pop up at all the showrooms.
yeah, at least I can do. At least I can do. I mean, first couple of kitchens they'll install. We'll send a little card, stuff like that. Dum 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 dum. Because actually, there is an enormous amount of emotion behind this, and this is where the kitchen independents absolutely score. So they are operating as part of a community. They have a shop or a showroom or whatever, and that shop or showroom is something that their customers drive by every day. They know where they are. They're going to see these guys at the school gates. They're going to see these guys at football practice. They're going to see these guys, picking kids up from ballet, whatever. They're actually part of the community. You don't get that with a multiple. You don't get that with a chain. I mean, I'm sure there are great managers out there, and I don't want to diss them at all, but fundamentally they are managers. They are not owners. So I am getting to the guys that are absolutely, and when I say guys, obviously I mean girls as well. I'm getting to the people that really do have their business balls on the line. I'm getting to people who know that they rise or fall entirely based on their reputation within their community. So if they do a rubbish install, then everyone's going to be dissing them. But actually, they're the ones that go that little bit further. They'll go that extra mile. They'll make sure that things actually work. They're the one that will get into the car and drive to the side of the country just to get the right hinge that got lost or whatever. All of that. And I want my kitchens to be all of that. I want my kitchens to be part of all of that. I don't.
Yeah, I guess I was going to say, there's a chance that you sort of lose a bit of your brand ethos, don't you? If you go to a big multiple, like what you were saying, you have to conform to all of these rules.
You completely lose control. And I have had projects. I promoted Maben for a while, which was extremely lucrative for me. And I'm not going to lie. Thank you, world. It educated 2 children and put shoes on their feet from Prada. But ultimately, my social media feeds would be full of people who were unhappy. And I found that very, very difficult. My kind of negotiating teams and my business teams and, everybody else were like, oh, when it happens. Okay, but I don't want it to happen. I don't want it to happen to people, who've put all their kind of financial eggs into this one basket. And they're wanting this kitchen and something's wrong. And of course, Maben folded. And I remember getting on a plane and I got a slow hand clap because there were so many disenfranchised Maben customers. I thought, the thing is, I mean, listen, if I was, out there designing those kitchens and, they didn't work because they were too me, then I would have no problem with it. I would be proud of that. It's fine. But actually, I was sucked into this kind of vacuous business deal where they were basically where they were using my face and my voice to sell their own moody kitchens. And that really, really taught me a massive lesson. And so with the Quintessential project, it's absolutely the reverse of that. So all of this I've designed, all of this I've created. And I now am just giving it over to the Quintessential dealer to then make it their baby. Because that's the other thing that I think people are really, really excited about. I think the dealers are particularly excited, is that the Quintessential concept. So we've got the four psychological brands, if you like, but it's fundamentally about a design palette. So I have not designed a kitchen. There's not a kitchen disco kitchen. What there is there's actually a really quite big catalogue of kitchen disco bits that all come together to make the kitchen disco of your dreams. So it means that actually you're unlikely to ever get 2 kitchen discos that are the same.
So I guess in a way you're kind of launching 4 brands within a bigger brand, aren't you?
This is exactly it. And but the other thing as well, and this is again why it's so important to be working with the independent retailer, is that I need to be working with designers. I need to be working with people that are excited about taking these design concepts and then literally fitting them into their client's life. And it means that and this is the big bounce back, the feedback we're getting, as each one that goes in, each kitchen that goes in, is just the fact that it is entirely special to them and that everything that they wanted is answered. But it's answered on a kind of a design level that nobody else is doing anywhere. So these are the guys that want the pink kitchen. These are the guys that want the orange and green kitchen. These are the guys that want the quiet luxury or whatever. All of the stuff that you can, absolutely get at the top end of the market. You certainly can't get on that kind of, high street democratic level because, all the chains, it is always going to be the grey box because the grey box sells for them. And what that means,
It's safe, isn't it? That
it's safe. And it means that when a customer goes into one of those stores and they're only ever seeing shades of grey, they get that sense of, well, I mean, this is appalling. I mean, I'm not this person. Why am I only being shown stuff that that's not me? Why can I not see the pink one? Why can I not see the orange one? I want to see the green one just to see whether I want it or not. That actually with quintessential thing, these guys aren't just now suddenly selling my kitchen because they've got kitchen just go in the window or whatever, and everyone's going, ooh, who's going in there and buying all sorts of other stuff. And I'm super cool about that. I mean, I think, the idea of kind of energizing a whole market into doing things in a much better, much more special way is such a wonderful, it's a great thing to be doing. Absolutely wonderful thing to be doing.
It's interesting hearing you sort of talk there about sort of people's design tastes and things, because we were chatting about this in the office the other day, is a lot of the big supplier brands now talk about giving consumers the option to, they say things like democratizing their design, basically making every kind of design accessible for people. And I think we were chatting about how before shows like Changing Rooms, design was this sort of lofty thing that was only really accessible to the uber wealthy if they could afford that. So it's interesting that you're doing this collection now when you've kind of heralded this whole era in a way.
I mean, if there's one thing that I'll prepare to have engraved on my gravestone, it is a term like democratic design, because actually you're absolutely right. And I mean, this is where I started. Before I did Changing Rooms, I was doing incredibly upmarket, very, very posh, very expensive design. And that was the whole kind of confrontation with the show, was the idea of taking, highfalutin, la-di-da interior designers and putting them into council estates. I mean, I think what kind of took everyone by surprise was the fact that I bloody loved it. But actually, I didn't find that difficult or intimidating, or, I know a lot of the others really did. They really struggled with it, but I bloody loved it. I loved the fact that I couldn't, I'd be doing a Changing Room show, and I'd finish, and then I'd get to the local airport because one of my clients had their plane waiting, and we'd be going to pick taps in Italy or whatever. The kind of incongruity, the extremes were extraordinary. But actually, it was the Changing Rooms bit I was really enjoying, because I couldn't go to Italy to pick the taps. Actually, I had to go to B&Q and find paint, or I had to think of a different way of using MDF or whatever. And actually, the sense of adventure in all of that, it was like uncharted territory. It was like daring do, and it was uncharted territory. Nobody'd ever done design on television before, really. Certainly never had it like that. Nobody had actually ever done observational documentary. This was the first fly on the wall. There were never any outtakes from Changing Rooms, because the outtakes were when it went right. It was always so real. It was always so so visceral. It was always happening in front of your eyes. But it absolutely did. It drove a tractor through the design industry 30 years ago. It was so exciting being part of that. What happened after a while, though, after about 5, 6, 7 years, the whole thing then contracted because it became about property value. So, if you're on television, I was everywhere, and then suddenly it was bloody Kirsty and Phil, Cherubini. And, actually it wasn't about what you did with your house. It was about what you did to sell your house, and then buy another house, and then buy another house, and then, get to the extent that you were so mortgaged, you couldn't actually, afford to buy loo paper.
And that sounds sort of a lot more soulless, I would say, than what the ethos of Changing Rooms was.
The ethos of Changing Rooms was all soul. I mean, it really was. It was like a play school. It was like, let's throw color around. Let's play with crayons. There's nothing sophisticated about it. It was never supposed to be sophisticated. I thought it was very interesting that very quickly, the BBC and the independent production companies very quickly started getting me into these other concepts. So Changing Rooms was going mad, but then I did Taste, which is a massive show for BBC Two, which is all about, it was basically the history of aesthetics in the UK. There was Fantasy Rooms, which was mad as a box of frogs. There was Homefront, Inside Out, where, we had very, very high budget. Obviously, it then spawned things like DIY and, all of this. Yeah. But it was interesting that actually I was given an opportunity to kind of, I went across the entire genre. I wasn't just that guy from Changing Rooms. I was also doing the other stuff as well. Uh, and I think in a funny sort of way, that's why I've lasted. I mean, it's ridiculous that, no one has actually managed to ever properly have the balls to sack me. 30 years I've been trying to be sacked. It's just going even worse.
So we were chatting a little bit a minute ago about how you've started working a lot more with independent retailers. Aside from just the ones stocking your range, perhaps, what's your advice right now for the independent retailer that you've sort of come to know a little bit better? Because the market's in a bit of a funny place where people are struggling, people aren't really sure what they need to be doing to get customers in the door.
I mean, the thing is, I think you need to sort of look at your benefits immediately, which is that, as an independent, you're not part of this, absolutely ridiculous, vicious property cycle, which most chains are into. Never forget that the McDonald's empire is not based on selling hamburgers, it's based on property. And actually, this is one of the problems that you do get with the big brands, the big, retail chains, all of this. Their trading can be great, but if their property portfolio is skewed, then it's not going to work. So actually, you're working, as an independent, you've got a lot more flexibility. The big thing is that you actually know your customers. That's the big thing. You're part of their community. You're part of their world. You know what they like. And they trust you. And that's, oh my God, that's just in something like the kitchen market, that is absolutely the most valuable thing in the world. What I'm saying is live up to that trust. What I'm saying is, actually understand that you are there to empower your customer, to help your customer get the kitchen that they've always wanted. In fact, we had a meeting yesterday. We had a production meeting yesterday. One of the things that some of the guys were saying at System 6 is, but what's happening? Because, you get a kitchen disco in the window and everyone goes crazy for it and they're all turning up and, and then halfway through the meeting, they go, yeah, but I'm not sure it's me. I'm not sure I could do it. My message is, you're in the store with that person. You say, yes, you are this. It's not even as if it's more expensive. It's not even as if you can say, oh yeah, but I can't afford it. Actually, chances are it's probably going to be cheaper than the one that you're, going to end up with. It's about you now. It really is about you. You're not going to have to justify this to Kirsty and Phil. You're not going to have to worry about your mother-in-law. You're not going to have to worry about anyone other than your own freaking conscience and all of this. So if you love, and this is the big thing that at the end of the meeting, I said, what we are doing and what we've got to completely focus on is the fact that the quintessential project is all about bringing love back into the kitchen decision-making process. So it's not about the way that, actually the teeth came out of it for the last 20 years, where it's, well, yeah, I quite like that. Yeah, yeah, no, that would work. That would do. I can see that. Yeah, that's, I don't want any of that. I want people to, oh my God, I've got to have that. That is absolutely, like I say, this is what's so fascinating, and particularly with Kitchen Biscuit, is the amount of emotion that's coming out when that kitchen arrives. These people are just going, this is literally why I have worked this hard. This is literally why I have, kept this going. I am now making a space that's for me and my family, and the core memories my family are going to have of me and being with me are in a space like this. I mean, that is absolutely incredible. It's something that, everyone I think needs to come to terms with a lot more in the home. Yes, the home is the biggest financial investment you'll ever make in your world. It's also the biggest emotional investment you'll ever make. This is the background to everything that happens. That everything that is you, all the good stuff, all the bad stuff, the weddings, the christenings, the funerals, that's your home is in that background. Is that grey space you? Is that kind of, redacted, soulless, emotionless, loveless space you?
Because like you said, that's a really expensive purchase, but it's also a very long purchase because people don't tend to do up their kitchens every year, do they? It's something you're stuck with for 20 years. So if you don't like it,
the other thing as well is, and this is something that I think Quintessential does very well, is that we've worked very, very hard to make sure this is not about fat, And again, with meetings, we never use words like trend, because I mean, trend. Well, who cares what trend is? The four kitchens that we've started with, the cuisine, the Kashmir, the Albany, the kitchen disco, these are nothing to do with trends. These are to do with psychological states of mind. These are to do with emotions. These are to do with giving people access to design that can kind of take them to another place, stimulate them, charm them, invigorate them. And the big thing with all of this, and again, this is why System 6 has been so great, is that it's about making it so that it can last as long as you need it to last. And that what I didn't want was the sense that, okay, these are fashion kitchens. They're not at all. They're not fashion kitchens at all. These are outside fashion. They are beyond fashion. And they are built to last. They are built in the way that you would expect an antique of the future. And again, the fact that they're all built in Exeter, this is not something that's coming across in great big containers from China. This is not something that we need to sort of feel slightly guilty about. This is absolutely to do with, I want the whole experience to be as nourishing as possible. And this is why, I mean, just in business terms, this is a business model that my entire business team, they're like weeping, got their head in their hands, because it's always been for me about building this business slowly and properly and cleanly and in a way that's responsible and nourishing. They would have been delighted if I'd taken any of those deals 2 or 3 years ago from some of the big guys, because that's big chunks of money up front.
And I suppose it's safe then, isn't it, as well? You can guarantee it coming in, but like we said, you lose a bit of the character, I think.
That's it as well. That's it. It's never going to happen again. This is about building. This is about building over time, building over the future. This is kind of a bit legacy. I'm not going to, right? At 60, I'd be lying if I would say that I'm not, got that at the back of my mind, that actually, wouldn't it be lovely in 20, 30 years, people remembering that quintessential moment when that weird guy off the telly decided to take the big bucks and do it with the big names, but actually just went to the guys that were on High Street. It's something that I'm trying to do throughout my commercial estate, throughout my all my product ranges now.
Because of course it's more than just kitchens with you, isn't it? It's shutters and it's furnishings.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. Soft furnishings, bed linen, flooring, lighting, all of this kind of stuff.
Entire houses, basically.
Basically, it is. Yeah, I mean, should you be taking the right kind of medication? The entire Llewelyn-Bowen environment, and also about doing things the right way around. So, for instance, it's like with kitchens. That started from kitchens that I designed for me. It's like with the sheet vinyl flooring from Harvey and Maria. That started because I wanted a sheet vinyl floor, and they did it as a one-off special for me, and it was a bit kind of like, are you sure about these colours, mate? That kind of lime green and orange, isn't that a bit kind of early changing? It's like, yeah, I know, but I really want it. And so they thought, well, it's sort of like they thought, right, we'll print 10 meters in that, we're never going to see it again. And of course it gets on Instagram and it absolutely goes so crazy. Everybody wants it. We're now wrapping fridges in that pattern. We're doing toasters in that pattern. People, it's like when you hit a design nerve, it really goes mad. And I want to be, I think I always have been the guy that hit the design nerves anyway. But I want to.
I mean, you've made a career out of that, really, haven't you?
I have. Oh no, yeah. I think I made a career about understanding where people's pain barrier is. So, like taking them up to that, but not actually pushing them over the edge. It's just taking them up to their design pain barrier and to kind of slightly tickles, but doesn't hurt. Because I think I think that's a really important part of understanding how people are in Britain. They are literate. They have been places. They have seen stuff. They're all over social media. They're all over Pinterest, Instagram, whatever. They know what they like. They know how things work. They want to see things from designers that are treating them as grown-ups, that are treating them as being literate. And you don't get that when you go into a grey box, chain. It's you're being treated as if you were, absolutely part of the mob. It's real, like, lowest common denominator pleb stuff.
It's funny hearing you say that, because a lot of the retailers that I talk to I don't know if it's the right way of saying it, but a lot of them almost think that the consumer, because of social media, can almost be too informed in the fact that they feel like they know everything about this industry, but really they don't understand the
Good.
practicalities.
But then again, that's about actually getting your relationship right. And I can imagine that that's a nightmare if you're the manager of a big grey box shop.
Oh, 100%, which we won't name, obviously.
Yeah, exactly. We can't use that. But if you go into like a local retailer, if you go into a quintessential dealer, there's that relationship. It's just like, you're you're absolutely right about that, and you've got to do that. But do bear in mind that if you're going to do that, it's going to need to do this, and you're going to have to think about that. And actually, you're going to take that from that guy because that guy's an expert. You're going to take that because you know that they are engaging with you. You know that they're actually. What they're trying to do is sell you the kitchen of your dreams. What they're not trying to do is just sell you a kitchen, because again, they know that if they sell you the wrong kitchen, it's not going to do them any good. Whereas a box shop guy, he just needs to keep the kitchens going out of the door.
It's like a production line in a way, isn't it?
It is. But you get an independent, again, one of the nice things actually spending so much time with the independents. There are times you ask all of them, there are times when they say, well, actually, there are moments where I've had to tell people that, no, I'm not going to sell you that kitchen. No, I'm not going to give you that kitchen because it's just not going to work. And I know that you're going to hate that experience and hate me. And so I'm going to be brave enough to say to you, no, you can't have that kitchen. What I want to do in quintessential as well, though, is I want them to be brave enough to say, yes, you can have that kitchen. Yes, you can have the flamingos. You can have the kitchen disco. You can have the orange. You can have the green. Don't worry about it. Don't just sort of flop back into the grey box because you feel you've got to. There's nothing more dispiriting. And actually, it's now a recognized psychological state where people, again, and it's through literacy and Instagram and social media and everything, where people are daydreaming about a specific aesthetic, about owning a specific aesthetic, about it being the thing they want, but then getting to the point where they are standing in front of a salesman or woman, indeed, and they're not buying it. They're actually buying the magnolia, like always, and actually the crash from that, is absolutely crushing. The fact that you could not actually back yourself enough to do the thing that you in fact want to do. Now, you're in a grey box shop. There's no help for you. There's absolutely nothing there that's going to help you. You're in your independent retailer. You're in your quintessential, and the guy's going, no, come on, you want this. Tell you what,
you can do it.
Exactly. Take the brochure, think about it. Have a chat about it. Dream it. Or look, let me do a visual. Let me do a CGI. This is what it's going to look like. Show the kids. Whatever it takes. But actually, that relationship, that moment where you've got two grown-ups talking about one thing, one project, one room, is so powerful. And I want to stop people crashing. I want to stop people walking away from aesthetic situations where they've settled. Life is way too short to settle. And of course, the tragedy with the kitchen is you're settling, but you're still paying a fortune. It's not.
Yeah, it's a very expensive mistake, isn't it?
Exactly. It's not even as if you're sort of settling for something, but okay, well, at least it was cheap. Like I say, half the time you'll end up settling for something that's more expensive than one of mine anyway. So just stop doing it, my friend.
So it's quite funny in a way, because I assumed that we'd just be talking about your kitchen range, but it almost sounds like you're saving lives in a way.
Oh, I know. I mean, God, talk about the Messiah syndrome, of course. No, I mean, I do. I think the thing is, it's just one of these things, isn't it? You kind of, what do? You get famous, you get electric gates, you count the money, and you have a nice life. And every now and again, you ask hello in just to make sure that, people understand you're still alive. Or you kind of have some frickin' fun with it, and you age with it, and you see what you're doing with it. And you can do it like Jamie Oliver, and you can be unbelievably pious and really rather dull about, making the nation eat better. Or you can say, actually, design isn't a monolith. It's not a grey thing. It's not a steel thing. It's not that thing that, was invented by Bauhaus in the 1920s. Design is literally about fun. It's literally about taking your bra off. It's about letting your hair down. It's about having a couple too many glasses of gin. It's about having a kitchen disco. Um, and I believe that fully. I believe that wholeheartedly. I've never not believed that. And I'm never going to stop believing that. I'm never going to stop rattling on about it. It is, yeah, okay, it's my mission. I want British homes to be a lot more fun. I want British homes to be a lot more, I want British homes to be a lot more you. That's the big thing. We do live in an extraordinary situation. We in many ways, we are the most democratic society in the world, certainly economically. We are homeowners. We own more people in this country own homes than anywhere else in the world. I mean, that is a staggering fact. What's even more staggering is that that's something that goes back 100 years. That's something that goes back 150 years. We are a very, very special island. And I don't think that we should be not celebrating that, quite frankly. I think that we should be absolutely reveling in that. Never, ever, ever forget that being at home, that is your safe space. That is your panic room. That is the only moment where you are actually surrounded by your own personality. When you go outside your front door, you are constantly judged. You are constantly appraised by everybody. What you've done with your home, it's absolutely totally just about you and the people that you invite in. We are living in a very, very creepy place at the moment. I really don't know whether you've noticed the news anymore, but I mean, it is
A little bit, yeah. I've looked around a little bit.
spiral, isn't it? I mean, it really. So to me, the fact that we have got somewhere warm and safe and expressive and us to retreat to and open a bottle of gin is an incredibly important moment. Who knows how long we're going to have that? Who knows how long we're going to have any of it? But actually, to be going home to a grey box that is not you. And of course, I mean, lockdown had a massive, massive, massive.
Oh, I mean, we hear a lot all the time about how that comes down to how consumers are a lot more design conscious now, aren't they? And I guess that's helped out as well.
Instagram's made a massive difference, and it really was the up until lockdown. I think but most that kind of youth bracket or young market up to sort of 30s, where you lived was basically a dormitory. It was somewhere that you you slept off your hangover. Actually, you didn't really engage with it. You might even own it, so you painted it grey, and you had those bloody 3 pebbles on a beach from IKEA. Never understood that. But of course, the thing is that the minute you're trapped in it for 6, 7, 8 weeks, you suddenly realize that actually you have sold yourself down the Swanee. And
It's quite hard to miss that, actually, isn't it, when you're looking at the same 4 walls all the time, if they're awful coloured walls.
exactly. And the big thing about Instagram, particularly, other social media sites are available, is the fact that when you put a picture of your room on Instagram, and it's a beige box with some lovely beige sofas and maybe a vase full of twigs, it doesn't actually look that good. But actually, 2 weeks later, and you painted the walls green, and you've got a red sofa, and you've got a turkey carpet and your grandmother's china, it looks amazing because it's all about the contrast. And not only does it look amazing, it looks unbelievably likable, and everybody is liking it. And so actually, I think that there was an immense amount of bravery that was born out of boredom with decorating, and then there was this instant ability to be able to show the world what you were doing. And I love the fact that actually something like Instagram has basically made me entirely obsolete. The sense of the arbiter elegantarum that actually decides what is
What's in and what's out.
exactly. No one cares. No one cares, because in fact, what's much more compelling is the influencer who you recognize as someone you can relate to. They've got your kind of house, they've got your kind of life, they've got your kind of snotty kids, and they've done that. And you go, wow, yeah, that's much more compelling. That's much more powerful. It is literally the moment where the lunatics took over the asylum. And I've always been a very, very, very bad asylum keeper. I've always left the keys out for you lot. I mean, I don't know whether you notice. They've always just been there for you to escape.
I think your influence definitely sort of speaks for itself. And just to finish up, I'd be remiss not to ask you, I know you've sort of only recently begun to roll out the quintessential range earlier on this year, I believe, but what is next for you in that collection? Is there going to be a dozen more quintessential styles, or are we keeping these 4 for now?
God, this is like world exclusive.
All right.
So what we're looking to do is, and I think this is going to make everybody's life very, very easy. I think it's going to be very exciting. We're looking at doing a kind of a signature collection, which is effectively, it's basically just a very broad design palette. And this is again absolutely just for the quintessential dealers. So outside the 4 concepts, there will then be a kind of like make it from scratch option. So we'll be looking at, great finishes. We'll be looking at colors. We'll be looking at accessories. And that will then give the quintessential kitchen dealer, the quintessential kitchen designer, an opportunity to then say to the client, okay, well, get it. So you're not kitchen disco, you're not this. So let's make one that's you. Let's actually play with all the bits that's going to be you. And then this is, I will be absolutely shot, hung, drawn, and quartered for sharing this with you. But I'm also planning another kitchen collection in the quintessential range, which is like the one on top. So this will be absolute jaw-dropping, the most LLB kitchen that you could ever think of, which will good at turrets, cobwebs, tassels. I don't know. It's going to be an opera box. It's going to be, it's going to be Alexander McQueen, Vivienne Westwood, Ruhlman, everything. It's literally will be my kind of casket collection. It's going to be.
The picture of that I've got in my head is horrifying and beautiful, somehow in equal measure.
That's what I want. And that is absolutely what I want on my gravestone.
Horrifying but beautiful.
I want the fact that I feel that for me, design operates at its best when it's perfectly poised between pleasure and pain. And so I think the idea of doing a kid, and it's so funny because in the meeting yesterday, it was a huge meeting. And everyone's like, because it's going really well, and we're all very pleased with ourselves, and we're all very brave, and it's lovely the feedback from the dealers and the feedback from the customers and everything. And then I drop that, and they're all going, yeah, he was all going far too well. Okay. So I think there's a moment with that where everyone's kind of going, yeah, well, we'll definitely look at that at some point. I don't know. 2028, 29, something like that. So, but I reckon there are people out there who would walk over broken glass to have the kitchen of, this extraordinary, almost like pharaonic conception. But in the meantime, for sure, look forward to the signature collection, which will be rolling out probably beginning of next year, beginning of 26, which will give you the ultimate option then of being able to create a Llewelyn-Bowen kitchen from scratch, which I think is quite an exciting concept.
Well, on that lovely point, I'm going to draw this to a close now. So thank you so much for making the time to talk with me today, Laurence.
No, George, absolutely. Well, let's do it for real now. Why don't you press record?